I used to think rich people lived somewhere else, behind gates, in bigger houses, with quieter worries than mine. It took me 79 years to understand how wrong I was, and by the time I did, the proof of it was already gone. My name is Daniel. I'm 79 years old. I'm telling you this because there was a day, not long ago, when I realized I had been rich for most of my life without ever knowing it, and that realization came far too late. I grew up believing that wealth was something you chased. My father believed that too. He worked with his hands until they cracked, came home tired, and spoke very little at the dinner table. When I was young, I promised myself I'd do better. I wouldn't struggle like him. I wouldn't worry about bills the way he did. I would build a life that felt secure, solid, successful. And in many ways, I did exactly that. I worked for 42 years. Same company, same building, same desk near the window. I showed up early, stayed late, volunteered for the hard projects, and took pride in being reliable. People trusted me. My boss respected me. My name meant something in that office. I liked that feeling. It made the long days feel justified. At home, things kept moving without much fuss. My wife handled most of the small details of life, the birthdays, the dinners, the conversations that didn't fit neatly into a schedule. I told myself we had an understanding. I worked. She managed the rest. That's how families functioned, or so I believed. The years passed quietly that way. Promotions came. Paychecks grew. The house got paid off. The kids grew older, faster than I expected. I noticed it, but only in passing. A new height mark on the wall. A deeper voice at breakfast. A college acceptance letter pinned to the fridge. I always thought I'd slow down later. There would be time for longer conversations later. Time for trips we talked about but never planned. Time for rest, for presence, for noticing the smaller things. Later always felt close enough to touch. Then retirement came, not as a dramatic moment but as a simple farewell cake in a break room. A handshake, a few speeches, a gold watch I wore twice. I remember walking out of that building for the last time, thinking I had finally arrived at the reward part of life. That's when the silence began. At first, it felt peaceful. Mornings without alarms, coffee without rushing. I told myself this was what I'd worked for. But peace slowly turned into something heavier. The days were long, too open. Conversations were shorter. My children called less, not out of neglect, but because they were busy building their own lives, just like I once had. And then, one winter morning, everything changed. My wife had been feeling tired for months. We dismissed it as age. Everyone does. Doctors ran tests. We waited for results. I still believed we had time. Then we sat in a small room with pale walls, while a man in a white coat spoke carefully, slowly, as if words could soften reality. I don't remember much of what he said. I remember my wife squeezing my hand. I remember noticing how thin her fingers had become. I remember thinking, for the first time, that my calendar suddenly meant nothing. The months that followed were quiet in a way I had never known. I was home every day, but I had never felt so present and so unprepared at the same time. We talked more in those months than we had in the previous 10 years combined. About memories, about regrets, about things we assumed the other already knew. One afternoon, as she rested on the couch, she asked me a simple question. She asked if I thought our life had been a good one. I said yes, of course it had. We raised children, we stayed together, we survived. She smiled gently and said she agreed. Then she added that her favorite moments were never the big milestones. Not the house, not the vacations, not even the achievements we were proud of. Her favorite moments were the ordinary ones. Late-night talks, shared jokes no one else understood, sitting quietly together without needing to be anywhere else. That was the moment something shifted in me. I realized those moments were always available. They had been right there every day, waiting for my attention. And I had traded many of them for overtime, for stress, for the promise of a future that kept moving further ahead. She passed away 3 weeks later. After the funeral, people told me I was strong. They said I had provided well, that I had been a good husband. I nodded. I thanked them. But at night, sitting alone in a house that felt too large, I replayed that conversation over and over. That's when the realization finally settled in. I had been rich. Rich in shared mornings, rich in quiet companionship, rich in chances to listen, to stay, to notice. Rich in ways that had nothing to do with numbers or titles or praise. And I hadn't known it. Now, my days are slower. I sit by the same window every morning. I watch the light move across the floor. I think about the version of myself who believed wealth was something earned only through effort and endurance. I don't blame him. He did what he thought was right. He wanted to protect the people he loved. He just didn't understand that protection also means presence. If you're listening to this and you still feel busy, still feel driven, still feel like life will begin once something else is finished, I won't tell you to change everything overnight. Life doesn't work that way. I'll only tell you this. Pay attention to the quiet richness you already live inside, the conversations that feel small, the moments that don't announce themselves as important, the people who are still there, waiting for your full attention. I learned the truth at 79. I only wish I had learned it sooner.